Now, joining us live from Ogun State to share their perspective on the subject is Dr. Gbenga Adeoye, an economic expert. Many thanks for joining us on the news, sir.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure being here today.
So, after so many back and forth, the CBN governor today finally honored the invitation of the House of Representatives. What do you make of this development?
Okay, when you look at the National Assembly, they have power to make arrest or call for an invitation, or the arrest of anybody has to come to answer questions. And so what happened was that the House of Representatives threatened that they're going to ask the Inspector General of Police to get the CBN governor arrested if he fails to honor their invitation. And that's been so because he's a public officer. And so he has no choice but to honor the National Assembly. And don't forget that the House of Representatives is the largest arm of the National Assembly, where you have so many members representing various states and constituencies in the country. And so when you get an invitation from such a body, indirectly, you have an invitation from the people of Nigeria. And so the right thing to do is what Emefiele has done by honoring their invitation.
Okay, now would you say that the threat of the House of Representatives was necessary, or might it be just too much?
No, I don't think they've gone overboard, not at all. And if you check the temperature of everybody around the country, the deadline, which happens to be today, before now, needed to be extended. And so you notice the pressure from all around the country that both the old Naira note and the new Naira note is not even available in the banks. And you know, when you don't have access to money, and then you notice largely that transactions in the country are carried out through cash, majorly, especially in rural areas and in certain sectors, especially the informal sector. So it becomes necessary for the central bank to have a rethink. And that's why you notice that when you see any government agency issuing any policy statement on a weekend, that tells you the gravity of the emergency on hand. And so it was on Sunday, after the CBN governor had a meeting with Mr. President at Naira, that a statement was issued that there will be an extension to February 10th. And that tells you the gravity of the situation. Because if that was not done, Monday, which was yesterday, will have been a crisis across the country. Even at that, you can see queues around automated teller machine and then in the bank.
And speaking about queues, the CBN governor has also said commercial banks in Nigeria will still accept ordinary notes from customers after the February 10 deadline. Do you think this is enough to assuage the perceived sufferings of Nigerians at this time?
Actually, accepting old notes into the bank after the deadline is not new. This is not the first time Nigeria is changing currency or introducing a new currency. And other countries, in fact, the United States had a policy recently where all dollar notes that have been printed up to a certain number of years were asked to be returned to the bank. And so what you do when you change your currency is to say, at a particular time, you are going to have a cutoff point when this currency will no longer be a legal tender. Now, not being a legal tender means that you cannot use it as a medium of exchange with any party you're transacting with. But then, the bank has the right to still receive this money so that they can in turn transport same to the central bank, who will eventually destroy them and replace them with a new note. And so what the CBN has done is to say, look, by 10th of February, that will be the last day that you can use the old note as a legal tender. However, from 11th of February, you can continue to take your money to deposit in the bank, and the bank must accept them. But you see, this policy statement has been made. I bet you there will be a little crisis, because some banks will say, look, when it is maybe 15, 16, they are not going to accept this money anymore, because you will see large crowd coming. But I'm praying that is not the situation, but this has been the trend in the country. And I do not think that 7 days may also be sufficient to handle this, especially for people that live in the rural area. So what I would say is that let's have, I had advocated earlier at one radio station that we need about 3 months, which is 90 days, to get this sorted. Even the US that was calling for dollar denomination that were printed up to 2006 or so, the time limit for you to bring them to the bank was more than a year. You cannot spend it in certain places, but you can deposit in the bank. So I think we don't have any problem asking people to bring the old notes to the bank with little more extension. That's my own view. But what the CBN has done is to actually listen to the cry of the people. It was an emergency. I want to suspect that certain leaders of the party spoke to Mr. President, concerned citizens spoke to Mr. President. A lot of us have spoken in different fora that this deadline cannot work. And I will say that the CBN governor was summoned by Mr. President to his village. It was that serious. It was not a meeting in Asoro. And so that can tell you, and on Sunday, and then they couldn't wait till Monday to issue that policy. So I believe that what we need to do is to go back to the drawing board. Let's review the position. We know the value of Naira in circulation before the new notes were redesigned. And so they can monitor and say, commercial banks, what do you have now? What have you brought to us? Do we still have? Because if you don't mop up, then you're going to be in trouble. You still need to mop up, because people will fall into serious poverty if suddenly somebody somewhere has 100,000 naira. As a result of one reason or the other, is unable to get to the bank, is unable to deposit same, it ceases to be a legal tender, and the bank can no longer accept. Then that person, the whole capital and business is gone. So I think we need to do a review. Let's be flexible a little bit. Let's assess the situation and see if there is a need to extend the time for which this will cease to be a legal tender, and then the time that commercial banks, money deposit bank can accept the old notes.
Okay, now with the situation we have on ground, we have this situation of money being monetized, because people need cash at hand, and the ones who have this cash are sort of putting it on the higher price. How best should the country handle policies like this in the future?
Well, I think the problem we have is that a lot of selfish interests all around this exchange of currency. You'll find out, I've seen some videos where people were actually spraying wraps of these new notes at an event. And I'm wondering how this has happened. But you see, that is also to tell you that where there are laws and there are exceptions, people tend to abuse it. So it means that certain persons who have right of withdrawal from the commercial bank were favored to receive the new notes, and then they commercialize it. Don't forget that this is a country where when you go for any party, those that love Faji, they know what I'm talking about. when you go for any event, you notice that people who you can refer to as maybe illiterate, who don't even have access to banks, like even like the people who are celebrating one event or the other. They are people hawking new notes, mint. I'm not even talking about daily design notes now. You need mint. You see people bringing it out and selling it maybe by 20,000 naira, you pay 2,000 naira or 3,000. Now, and the question that I've always asked, how are they getting this money? Because this is from the central bank. How are they getting it? It means that there is compromise somewhere. So my issue would be that let's work on our database. If somebody is coming to the commercial bank and withdrawing as much as, let's say, the 5 million limit for companies in a week, let's document. Let's know what they are using it for. Let there be certain records of what this money is meant for, such that it doesn't get back to the market as a means of business. And so people begin to sell cash again at profit. And that's why the common man will not get it. Can I shock you with a very bad news yesterday? I had a meeting with a former Minister of Finance who was a former commissioner in the Western region and former commissioner of finance in my state, an elderly man who is going to turn 90 this year. He needed just little cash from his bank, and he was in the bank. He could not get any money, not even the old or the new. At the end of the day, they told him the highest you can get is 50,000, and then they got him old 100 naira note. And when he showed me, I started sneezing, dirty and smelly. And that is at the highest level of somebody who was a former minister of finance in the country, who is going to turn 90 this year. Now, how is it then that you now find this same currency in the hands of certain persons, hawking it on the road? So this is where we have the problem. They've commercialized all the things that are meant, to give us conveniences. So that's the problem.
All right, we thank you so much for sharing your views with us on Galaxy TV News.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
And that's Gbenga Adeoye, an economic expert.